This is the World Today weekend on CKNW News Talk 980. Once again, here's Sean Leslie.
We're speaking with Jodie Emery. She's the president of Cannabis Culture and the owner of Cannabis Culture Headquarters, a political activist, public speaker. Her husband, Marc, is serving time in a U.S. prison for selling marijuana. And just to clarify, Jodie, so if he did serve out the rest of his sentence in the U.S., and where is he, Mississippi?
Yep.
Yeah, he could be out by next summer, like 1 year from now, roughly?
July 9th is the early release date, July 9th next year.
Now, having heard what John Conroy has said, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, you've heard this kind of thing before, are you leaning against trying to get him back to Canada?
Well, it almost seems like the Conservatives would be punishing him by bringing him home, so I'm not sure which is the better option. So really, I've always wondered about that. Marc wonders too. And 2 years ago when he applied for transfer, of course, it would have been preferable to have happened then. But I don't know. Maybe if I ask the Conservatives enough to bring him home, they won't, and that'll work in our favor. I'm not quite sure exactly what's the best way to go.
Is it your sense that once Marc is out, whether it's in the United States next year or maybe if the transfer is approved and it's here in Canada and it's a bit earlier but with all sorts of conditions, is it still your sense that he plans to continue sort of waging his political battle around marijuana, Jodie?
Oh, absolutely, but he doesn't necessarily require civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience, which is what he did. Remember, in 1994, when he started selling seeds, nobody else was doing it. There weren't even medical marijuana laws anywhere in the United States, and now there's 18 and 16 decrim and 2 legalization. But Marc gave millions of seeds and millions of dollars to those activists because that was the way to make the money, by breaking the law and using that money for good. He doesn't need to do that anymore. There are hundreds and hundreds of seed sellers all throughout Canada, the U.S., and around the world. None of them are giving money to legalization efforts. They're cashing in. But Marc's purpose was just to do it at that time, and he was successful, and people planted the seeds of freedom to overgrow the government, as he said. So he's accomplished that. There's no need to sell seeds again because people have already got all the varieties and everything they need now.
But the law hasn't changed in Canada, has it? We seem to be stuck in time here in Canada.
Well, as soon as Marc was arrested for extradition and then the Conservatives got elected in 2006, right after that, that's when things started going downhill. So definitely Canada has been going backwards with Harper in charge, and the U.S. has been making progress. But remember that the war on drugs and marijuana prohibition began in the United States. It spread from the United States around the world like a cancer, going into Mexico and Canada and Bolivia and Colombia and all over the world, into Afghanistan. We know our own soldiers of the Canadian military are involved in the drug war abroad, and it's the United States that has always funded and pushed for this. So the drug war has to end in the United States first, and that was what Marc knew. And only by killing the cancer at its source can we kill it all over the rest of the world and start freeing people from prison and saving billions of tax dollars and eliminating the lifeblood of gangs, which is drug money. And it's the government that's making everything worse here in Canada, while in the United States, progress is happening to set the example for the rest of the world.
604-280-9898. Ron in Abbotsford's on the line. Hi, Ron.
Yeah, hello, Sean. I had no use for Marc Emery before, but I've changed my mind. I like to see consistency in the law, and I'd like Jodie to respond to on the news the other day. They mentioned a cop that was convicted of stealing narcotics from the exhibit room. He gets no jail term now and no criminal record. Now, what's worse, a breach of trust or abuse to the taxpayers? We're paying that guy's wages. We're not paying Marc's wages. So what's worse? I think selling seeds is very frivolous, and I'm angry about that part of it. And that's not just one cop. There's a lot of cops that do that. And here Marc's sitting in a bloody jail cell for selling seeds? That's ridiculous.
Well, Jodie, what do you say?
Absolutely, and one of the problems with prohibition is that it creates corruption. Police. The police get involved in the corruption because how can they resist when there's gangsters with guns and millions of dollars saying, just take this money and we'll let you go and live and take care of your kids and you let us sell our drugs and everything will be okay? How can cops not resist that? We know in Mexico and all throughout the U.S. and Canada, police are corrupted by prohibition, and the only reason is because of the huge sums of money involved, and the only reason there's big money involved is because when something's illegal, there's a risk involved with dealing with it, and the risk increases the reward. It's just simple logic. And what's happening is a lot of police officers cannot resist that allure. Just like young people, teenagers, they can't resist the allure of the big money. Our whole world is run on making big money. And when you provide a market with huge sums of money like the illegal drug market, you suck people into it. Even the guy who designed TELUS's amazing advertising campaign, he was smuggling pot across the border. It's hard to say no to that much money, but it's only because of the police and the politicians who enforce prohibition that huge amount of money is available to be made.
Let's all remember that the President of the United States is a former pothead. He hung out with a group of fellow teenagers in Hawaii. They called themselves the Chiba Gang. Obama was well known as a big fan of marijuana. I don't think Stephen Harper's ever touched this stuff, but our Premier of British Columbia admits she dabbled with pot when she was a teenager. It is everywhere. And Jodie Emery, I did want to ask you, we do have this Sensible BC campaign now that is trying to get a referendum going in British Columbia on decriminalizing pot possession. We all know it's a federal responsibility. Provincial government cannot legalize pot, but the aim of this campaign is to have a referendum asking the government to stop the police from enforcing marijuana laws. Do you support this? Are you involved in it? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I definitely support it because we know police are being forced to arrest harmless people who haven't hurt anyone because of the laws that exist. Now, in the U.S., we're seeing states legalize pot because they're allowed to do that with their state constitutions. They've got a different system. Here in Canada, the drug laws are federal, and only the health minister can actually remove marijuana from the drug definitions. So in B.C., we have to choose a different route. We can't change the drug laws here, but we do have a say over what police are allowed to do. And we can tell the police with the Sensible Policing Act, which is Sensible BC, that they're not allowed to spend any time or money arresting people for simple possession. Because people who get pot possession criminal records, they lose their scholarships, they lose their ability to travel, they lose job opportunities.
Can't travel.
Their lives are destroyed because of the law, not the pot. The pot didn't destroy their lives. So Sensible BC is looking to protect the taxpayers' dollars, protect peaceful British Columbians, and allow police to focus on more important crimes instead of arresting thousands of people for simple possession. And it's the only way we can do it so far in British Columbia. But we may as well, since legal marijuana is available just an hour south of Vancouver.
Sure is. Let's get Bob in Vancouver on the line. Bob, hi, go ahead.
Yeah, Jodie?
Yeah,
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, you talk about, all the huge money in the drug trade and whatnot, right? Why is it huge?
It's huge because when something is made illegal, the value goes up. So we all know of Al Capone and the gangs that made big money during alcohol prohibition. So when you take away the risk involved, the actual substance isn't valuable.
What's your point, Bob?
But what if people didn't smoke it? How valuable would it be?
Well, you're going to try to kill the demand? You don't think 50 years of the drug war is going to...
Individually. Can't people realize, Emery, he spends his entire life legal, doing something when he could be doing something very valuable. I think he's a bright guy. But isn't there other things in his life that he could have done besides trying to legalize pot?
You got 30 seconds, Jodie.
Marc made Sunday shopping legal in Ontario. Marc broke the Sunday shopping laws by opening his bookstore when it was illegal to do so. Did you know rap music, the record 2 Live Crew, was also illegal in Canada? And Marc brought it in from the U.S. and sold it and said, take me to court so I can challenge this law because it's ridiculous to make music illegal. He did the same thing with High Times magazines and books about censored topics. Marc has been fighting for freedom for Canadians in many different ways before he even discovered pot.
All right, Jodie, I have to jump in and leave it there. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm right up against the clock. Appreciate it. We'll have you back, Jodie Emery. We'll take a break for the 4 o'clock news here on CKNW News Talk 980.